We can see, Brian.
All right. Now, and I was just making sure the recording had started. It was taking a minute for it to start. Okay, perfect. So let's get going. All right. So one of the first things I also want to show you today, besides the how you work with the exercises in the cover page, is also the Material Master catalog. We didn't really have a chance to take a look at that yesterday. I think it would have been maybe a little too much for the first day for those that are new to all this. But I think today, before we do the physical goods receipt and the virtual goods receipt of materials, it would be a very good way to understand what these materials look like in the catalog, what the Material Master looks like. Also, some of the comments that were made by Nico and Angelo and Elena in terms of serializing equipment, right? And if these materials are received, they should be returned, received into inventory or directly for consumption. And we were discussing quite some interesting things yesterday, and I think today is a good day to go back and revisit that. Okay. So one of the first things we'll do, we're just logging into the environment. So basically, before I log into the training environment, and this is something our colleague here, Elena Carrasco, had shared in the comments, right, in the chat yesterday. Actually, if you guys go to the tab for all here, when you log into Citrix, you have an icon, and I believe the screenshot was also shared in the chat for the Material and Service Master tool, right? To basically just double click on that and launch your Citrix. For those of you who are new to this and are not using this tool.
It was shared in the chat of the channel, not in the chat of the session, just to clarify.
All right, no problem. That's fine because everyone has access to it anyway. So they should be able to see it. If you guys go into the channel and look at the chat, you'll see this there too. Nonetheless, we're just going over it now again. So let me just make that screen here, get it out of the way, and go to my Citrix again. Okay, so this is what the Material Master dashboard looks like. So basically, you have the Material Master data that is available for us right now is available here. And the way this works, before we used to have to download this Excel spreadsheet with all this information. Now we can still extract an Excel sheet if we want to once we have our results. But what this allows us to do is basically perform searches depending on the description of the material we're looking for. Now here you have basically a sort of a scroll down in alphabetical order of the data that we have in the Material Master. Of course, this could take you quite a while, but at least it's in alphabetical order. So it doesn't have to take you that much if, for example, you're looking for a cell phone, right? Yesterday, we were talking about cell phones. So all we would have to do is look for the CE here, CEL, and we're looking for a ceiling fan, and maybe I have, let me just go back there. Okay, this just closed on me. All right, here we go. So you can either do it like this, which of course this would be the very long way to do this, searching for something, or you can type in the words you're looking for. So for example, we're looking here that cell phone wouldn't be available, right? But a cellular smartphone, there you go. So we have cellular smartphone. And if I just select that, just simply with that option, and I click on search, what the system is going to return to me, okay, it's now loading all the data related to cellular smartphone. And I know because we were talking about smartphones yesterday, right? The buying phones and not having them into inventory, but making them directly consumable. I think this was for Minujust. And we were also talking about the serialization. And then Nico jumped in and said, yes, but only some of them are serialized, others are not. So I was thinking, why don't we start with that, right? Let's pull this first. So I just selected a cellular smartphone in that drop down, and I did this manually, just scrolling. Of course, we could always just write this here if we didn't want to select it from the drop down. We can also write here cellular and then anything and click on the search, and that would return anything that is linked to cellular, right? Anything related to cellular, smartphone, or anything else that it has the word cellular in it. That's why there's free text for these boxes. You can also have terms that are linked to each other by using the AND option or the OR option here when you're performing your search. click on search and get your results. And you see, once you have your results, you could always just export this into an Excel. Okay, the box here for noun description doesn't allow you to type anything. It looks like it does, but it doesn't. What it does is it shows you the description of the selection you have made, right? So a mobile phone with an advanced mobile operating system. All right, and so on. The important thing is what we see here when we get our results. And this can help us understand what we were talking about yesterday about material master and master data, right? We have here the material number. If you remember this from yesterday, right, starting with 1.5, it's usually linked to equipments. But we also had some expendables starting with 1.5. Remember that the material number is also the product ID. So this ID is the one that's linked to this item throughout its entire life cycle. And remember that this also defines how to manage this, this material in the system. So if this is this type of material number, we have a short description for it here, a long description. The material master defines its unit of measure. It defines the material type, the material group that it belongs to. The material group description is here. Even the GL code, right? The general ledger code that is linked to it. And the description here, consumption, IT, and user equipment. It also tells us, remember we were looking at this in the PowerPoint presentation yesterday, if it's serialized or not. And this is something Nico was making reference to. And maybe we can go back to that because I find it very interesting here that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 cellular smartphones, Android, but they have different descriptions, right? One is Android Advanced, one is Android Entry, Android Standard. So we have 4 different phones, but only one of them is serialized, the one that is advanced. And this is something Nico was mentioning yesterday. And maybe we can come back to this and discuss it before I jump into my exercise really quick. So if I'm not mistaken here, when we do the goods receipt, which is what we're going to do today in the system, of these phones, for example, the smartphone cellular Android Advanced and the smartphone cellular iOS standard, not iOS standard, sorry, the advanced one, these two will have a serialization flag, which means that when I receive into inventory, which as we discussed yesterday, and this is also something my colleague Elena Carrasco was mentioning, that since the ramp up, right, occurring 2 years ago, when we were dealing with the exceptional cases, when GDP had already gone through, we went through the blackout period, all the items that we were receiving were now received into inventory, okay? We were never receiving anything directly for consumption. We always receive it into inventory, and then we perform goods issues if we needed items, correct? So these items we have here, when they're received into our inventory, would be automatically flagged to be serialized, at least these two. But if I'm not mistaken, and here's where I throw out the question to the Nico, Angelo, and anyone else out there who wants to jump in. The other items, for example, the smartphone cellular here, even though they have a similar description, right? To me, these are phones. These are not supposed to be serialized. So I won't receive a flag saying these have to be serialized. So the system is considering them expendables, although they're Android phones and they're smartphones just like the ones above. Or is this difference here with advanced and entry? What does exactly this mean, and how does that make it different from one phone to another? Okay, and this is a question I'm just launching out there to you guys. I don't know if you're answering through the chat, if you want to speak up, however it is, but I find this to be very interesting. Like, why is this one serialized and not the others?
Yeah, Domenico is confirming all your statements that regard. Yeah.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Nico.
Hi. Okay, actually, the creation of product ID is outside of our business, okay? So in this case, of course, we cannot use the word iPhone or Samsung, for example, and it's the software that identify which kind of telephone it is, okay? So the very first one, Smart Cellular, is a generic description, right? So it means any make that is not Samsung or any mobile phone that use the Android software. And the iOS, of course, is the one related to the Apple devices, okay? Under the column of serialized, if it's blank, it means that it doesn't require serialization, sorry. So it's an equipment not serialized, And when you find UN01 or UN05 under the column of serialized, this is in the dashboard, it means that at receiving level, it will require and create a serialization. The reason why the advanced one or the entry or standard one are not to serialize, actually I don't know, maybe it depends from the old model of iPhone. Maybe Claudio can perhaps better than me in this, because all the smartphones now are very advanced. Give you example, iPhone XS or 11, whatever it is, 11 Pro, are last generation of mobile and has a huge cost and huge functionality. So maybe they decide to let's serialize this kind of devices and to distinguish with the older one that are still iPhone, but for example 7 and 8. Claudio, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, okay, if may I jump in on that. Catalog is not well maintained, and in some cases they forgot to put the serialization UN01 or UN05 on the descriptions. Regarding the generic one, though that one is basically, you will find the generic description on each kind of equipment, and mainly the generic description is used for system contract purposes when they create a system contract. When it comes to purchase order, it's always not recommended to use a generic description, okay? Because then this is how you will end up having the item into the system. So generic description is not recommended to be used. So just keep it as a sample for a system contract. The other ones, as said, while they are not serialized in the system, they are tracked not as expendable or consumables, but they are traced individually. While they don't have a serial number, they are tracked individually in any case. Okay, so once you issue, you can always return them to stock. Correct me, right, Nico?
Yes, and to answer to Daniel, it's yes. Once the item is physically received by the receiving user, let's say RNI, and I'm creating a material document for that particular product ID, the system automatically serialized that PID, and it will go through the inventory with the new serialization number. Actually, not automatically, you have to flag the serialization matchbox. So it's quite important to understand that everything is decided at shopping cart level. Okay, so it's very important that at shopping cart level the right product ID is chosen in order to have the proper items into the inventory later on.
All right, thank you guys for your.
Sorry,
sure.
I intervene. Sorry, I think I need to intervene as this quality of data brings me back to about 10 years ago when we were using Galileo and it was decided to create a codification unit. So when I joined that codification with Fabio and Gianluca Pignano, we cleansed a lot of data, and with the help of the technical people. Why technical people? Because the way it was structured, and I think it is still structured, is that in addition to the generic description, you need to have mandatory field where you can distinguish one description from another. So I can see here that within the mandatory descriptions, there are different values like advanced, entry level, standard. Now, we are talking about cellular phone that everyone is familiar, so more or less everyone would be able to understand the difference between one and the other. But when it comes to a very technical equipment, then you really need to have experts to be able to help, let's so-called codifiers, to map the description in the system. I can see from here there is a lot of cleansing exercise, and I have to say I feel sorry to see again the proliferation on one very basic item, which is a cellular phone. I can read already 6, 7, or 8 different descriptions. So what I want to say is that this is an exercise that needs to be maintained by the responsible, but in collaboration with the technical people who can help them to distinguish one item from another one. So yeah, it's as Nico said, it's important to pick the right item, but when it comes to choose which one to pick, I can see some difficulties there to pick the right one if there is 3 or 4 different. Sorry, I wanted to share this because maybe I'm sure most of you remember this time. It was a long time ago where we had gone through a cleansing exercise. Maybe whomever is near to these responsible people now should alert them to cope with the expertise.
Thank you, Gianluca, and as well as Nico and Angelo for intervening. Definitely. So we did. Yes?
If I may add, this tool is used by many other entities. Some of them still don't use the inventory. So some product ID may be useful for those entities who aren't using inventory and warehouse. But for you guys, you should, in this case, choose the serialized equipment. That's why we see a mixture of different product IDs. Some of them are used for solicitations, others are for entities without inventory and warehouse, and some are for peacekeeping and SPMs.
Thanks, Elena. I just also want to make reference to your job during liquidation in the mission, right? I believe, as far as I know, none of you are going to be raising shopping carts, right? You're only going to be receiving pending goods, right? Or transactions that are pending. So if the mistake is made at the shopping cart level when you guys are receiving the goods, there's really no way you guys are going to understand if the right product ID was picked from the beginning or not, right? When we start processing the goods receipt or the physical goods receipt, the virtual goods receipt or physical goods receipt, and we'll do that right now in the demo, the system should let us know if the smartphone selected, right, that we're receiving into our inventory has to be serialized or not, right? If the mistake was made from the beginning of the shopping cart when the goods are being purchased and we selected one product ID without a serialization, then may the system, Migo, when you're performing Migo, it won't tell you, okay, you're good to go, because this equipment doesn't require serialization, right? That's what I'm afraid of the most. That's why I wanted to bring this up again. First of all, so that you guys could visualize what we were talking about yesterday in terms of master data and what it looks like in the dashboard, and also understand how this serialization flag, right, that the system will automatically launch when you're receiving goods. If the wrong item is chosen at the beginning of the process, during the liquidation process when you're receiving goods, you will really have no way to know if the mistake was made at the beginning or not, right? And this is something I think you guys are going to encounter a lot when cleaning up data in the mission. So we have to keep this in mind, right? And we have to learn how to use this tool. Also what Elena is saying, Angelo and Nico and so on, is very important that we all keep this in mind. So I wanted to share this at the beginning of this session before we actually start. Another thing is that all these shopping carts, let's say, and POs that were raised and the goods that are incoming that you guys are going to be receiving during liquidation should be received into inventory, right? That's the normal process. That's the norm, and that's what is told to do. But I recall yesterday also, and this is the last thing I want to talk about before we jump in, is the fact that we did say that, for example, ICT purchases crypto equipment, right? Or if we're purchasing for a project using a WSB, then those are cases in which we may not receive into inventory. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember this was mentioned. I'm not sure if this was Angelo or Nico or who it was exactly, but this was said. So there are still some cases in which people will raise shopping carts for goods that are going to be directly for consumption and not received into inventory. Like, for example, this ICT crypto equipment.
Yes, it is correct. Sorry, this is Angelo. Actually,
Okay.
crypto equipment, since it's security equipment, it's been basically agreed that is kept, the control is kept outside of Umoja. So basically, it's ordered through a shopping cart, but it's ordered for consumption. So when you receive it in the mission, the system, it creates an equipment record, but it's not basically posted. And all the crypto equipment is maintained outside of Umoja. When you do the liquidation, usually those crypto equipment should be decommissioned and returned to Brindisi for write-off purposes. Those cannot be written off. Those any crypto equipment should be written off in the field. Everything should be returned to Brindisi, where we have the global crypto custodian, and it's disposed at Brindisi level.
Okay, thanks, Angelo. That's great.
It's the only case actually.
Okay, it's the only case. All right. Just to keep that in mind, because since we're going to be performing the Migo transaction today, to understand and know the difference of receiving into inventory and the transaction to actually post it and receive it into inventory. And then, for example, this specific case for the crypto equipment that wouldn't go through that process, right? But for the majority, let's say every other piece of every other material that we're receiving would have to go through this transaction that we're going to be performing today. Okay, just wanted to bring that back up and make sure that I had understood that comment correctly. First, with the serialization of some product IDs and those that didn't have it, also for the consumption versus inventory. And I think that this review has been good enough, and maybe we can jump into the demo right now. I hear someone else. I don't know if somebody wants to make another comment.
Hi, Brian. This is Pietro. If may I?
Hey, Pietro. Of course.
Yes, just to add another information regarding this specific PID about the smartphones, and we have to take in consideration even the category type, is because especially for the PID, the first one is the generic smartphone cellular, the 153894. Is in the column serialized. It appears that it is not serialized, but in the system appears like serialized items, but not, let's say, managed as a serial item. This means that once you are trying to perform an inventory transactions, okay, you can, use that specific PID, but without mention the serial number, because the system does, let's say, ask you to add that serial. But this generates some mistakes and some error in the system, because these items in the system exist, this category T, but must be, updated manually in terms of, system status and system user status as well. That's all.
Okay. Thank you for that. And this is something that we'll definitely see during day 3 with our colleague here, Elena. Will be covering the equipment enrichment, assignment, and handover, and I'm sure we'll be able to see what Pietro's talking about, updating the statuses of equipment. Okay, so I think that we've seen enough of the Material Master. Of course, there's a lot more to this. I recommend you guys jump in, especially to those that are not that familiar with the Material Master dashboard. Play around with it, understand how it returns results, the material numbers, product IDs, descriptions, so you understand that the items, the materials we're going to be dealing with in the system are okay. We have a bad network quality. I hope you guys can still hear me fine.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah? Okay.
So sometimes you break a little bit, but it's okay. Don't worry.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Daniel, for that. Okay, so just a recommendation to keep an eye on this Material Master dashboard. Just a quick reminder of where I got this from. So remember, we logged in to the Umoja. Okay, we have this link of the login in every exercise, and I'll show you that in a second. We went to the tab for all and clicked on the Material and Service Master. Again, Elena Carrasco posted that in the chat of the channel, so you have that reference there at all times that you can go back to. Okay, so let's now jump into our exercises and the demo and how our cover page and exercises work, right? We're going to be sending you an email in the afternoon with your cover page. Well, actually an email that's going to contain all the cover pages for everyone. So I recommend you look for your name in this cover page. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So one of them will be this, okay, will be your cover page, which will basically give you the objective of the exercise, the exercise that you're actually going to perform, the materials that you're going to be using, the credentials, the documents that you may use, as well as the types of reports that we recommend to use while doing this exercise, and then the step-by-step breakdown by role and T-code. Okay, that's your cover page. That's it. It's mainly that, 1 or 2 pages the most. And then besides that, you're also going to receive the exercise itself. Okay, this is going to be one single PDF attachment. So in a sense, the email is going to contain 2 documents, one Word document with the cover page and one PDF. The PDF is the actual exercise. This exercise, again, you'll find the description, the job aids that we recommend you read to understand what to do when performing this exercise. Again, we can't cover everything in one exercise. It would be a 500-page document, okay, that no one would do. Every exercise contains the login steps, okay, and the actual link. You just have to click on this link and this will launch. See, right away it takes us to the login page. So let me go back to that. The step-by-steps of what to do, what to select, and so on. And then from there, once you're logged into the system, the username that you have to use. So we'll say log into ECC as inbound coordinator, okay, inbound coordinator RD1, and that's why it's important that you go back to your cover page every time you're supposed to log in as someone, okay, and make sure that in the cover page, when you're logging in as inbound coordinator, you see here, use the below credentials and password to perform exercises in T1E client 520. You guys will use the inbound coordinator credential, which is this one here, to log in the system with this Umoja 133 password. Yes, Daniel.
Please zoom in just a little bit, so we see the user, exactly the numbers and codes. Thanks.
Okay, was it very small? Okay, I'm going to do it now step by step, but I just wanted to go over this quickly. Okay, but thank you. So I'm going to make sure this is big enough, I think. So you see the users that are there. In this case, they look all the same. We have the same user for both roles, inbound and receiving, but then you see for warehouse senior and warehouse user, we have different types of credentials, okay? So keep that in mind. You're always going to be coming back to your cover page for basic information as to login credentials, the equipment to use, the documents we actually created for you, okay, and the step-by-step with the T-codes. The exercise itself, the body of the exercise, what this does is tell you step-by-step with screenshots and T-codes what you have to perform in the system, okay? And now I'm going to do that with you guys together. I'm going to perform the first exercise as a demo so we can all follow. And the one I'm going to perform right now is and let me zoom out of this so we can get the full picture here, is the inbound delivery and physical goods receipt. Okay, I also want to show you, this is for both those of you who are new to Umoja and those of you who are already experts, a couple of, or maybe just one of the aspects that are new now since the transportation management module has been implemented. Packing has become not only critical as it's always been, we're always supposed to do packing during the inbound delivery in the inbound delivery document, but now it's, let's say, mandatory for the TM module, as you won't be able to plan transportation without that packing performed. Okay, we're going to also focus on that. So remember, 2 documents. You'll get a cover page and a body to perform the exercise. So let's do that. Let's log into the training environment. Okay, and actually, what am I supposed to do? I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. So let's follow the exercise and what it tells me. So if I started with part 1, inbound delivery, follow the instructions to log into the training environment T1E client 520. I would use this link. This link would take me directly to the login page. You would add your username and password to log in to Umoja. Once you're in this page, let me just bring this one over here. Okay, you would have to put in your Unite ID and password, click on continue, and once you're there, select the tab All. All right, so you see step by step, we explain absolutely everything. So I click on my tab All, and then I would have to, once I do that, click on the icon for SAP GUI, which is right here, okay? And we put a square on each one of these. SAP GUI is this one, so I just click on this. It'll tell me if you want to open Citrix. Every browser computer is going to react differently. So we have Citrix open now, and there it is. Okay, this is what it will look like. This is your login page. Okay, and let's see what we're supposed to do in this screen here. So we go back to our exercise. We keep scrolling down, and we find out that we have to select following options to access training environment. First, option 3-point Umoja training systems. Very good, which is this one here. And then 3.1 Umoja training ECC T1E, which is this one here. So everything is explained in every exercise depending on the training environment that you have to log into. So let me go back to that screen and say that it was this one, 3-point Umoja training system. And then from this option here, again, you can make this a bit wider to see all the options. What was I supposed to select? It says 3.1 Umoja training ECC T1E. Okay, so Umoja training ECC T1E. So the Umoja training and the 3.1 Umoja training. Now, sorry, I know this sounds simple, but this is always an issue we have when the people are new to logging into the training environment, selecting the wrong options and not being able to log in, and then blocking users and the credentials that we provide. So make sure you follow the exercise in the body and see what you have to do and what you have to click on. So once you get to this point here, this is very important, because if you select the wrong environment, no matter how many times you add the correct user and password, the system is going to constantly tell you that it's wrong. So remember to select these, and once that is selected, we just double click and it'll ask you, okay, please add your client, as you see here, please add your user and your password. Now, where do we have this information? Let's go back now, and we can see that we have here to log in client 520. Okay, type 520 in the client field, and we have that screenshot here. So the client should say 520. We go back over here, and we make sure that we have 520 over here. Now, what do I add for username and password? We go back to our exercise, and it says log into ECC as inbound coordinator. Now, where are my credentials for that? Here's where we go back to our cover page. Okay, and let me zoom into this. And where do I have the credentials for the inbound coordinator? You have it here. Use the below credentials and password. We have the inbound coordinator right here, RD1, with its password Umoja133, and the role is this one here. You can basically just copy, go back to the Citrix login, paste it right there. And then the password, we have Umoja133. Okay, now in this case, what I'm going to do is make sure that there's no space in between the 133, because that's something that's very important. There's not supposed to be any space between the Umoja and the number, the digits, okay? And you realize Umoja is with a capital U. I'm just making reference to this because if you decide to type in Umoja without paying attention to how it's supposed to be written, just like any other password, you'll get an error. And if you do it 3-4 times, you'll block your user. You won't be able to practice your exercise. So it's very important that the best thing I recommend is to simply copy and paste the password too from your cover page. So we'll make sure as trainers that the passwords don't have any spaces. Okay, but it's always like this. Capital U, Umoja, 133, depending on what it says. If it's 123, copy the 123, but I always recommend copying and then pasting the password there too. Once that's done, you click on enter. And this may happen to you if somebody is logged in with the same user right now, which there shouldn't be anybody logged in right now with this user, but there is, okay? I'm asking if any one of you is actually trying to perform this at the same time that I'm doing it. I ask you not to, because we may screw up the entire demo or the exercise. So please, let's not do that. All right, let's just follow the demo first, and make sure that if this happens by any chance, it's always going to say terminate this logon. That's the option by default that shows up. If you click on yes, I would terminate the logon of that person who's logged in. which I probably should do it, but I don't know who it is, so just in case I won't, what I recommend is click on the second one, continue without ending any other logon in the system. Once we click on that, you're logged into the system. Okay, now I know it sounds like a lot, but the first few times you do it, it's going to be very easy, and then you'll be fine. Be very careful when you log in. Okay, make sure you follow the steps, you're adding the credentials correctly, and if you're getting errors, maybe contact one of the trainers and say, listen, I'm getting errors. Before I block my ID, what am I doing wrong? Okay, we'd rather help you with that than having all our IDs blocked. Now we're logged into the system. Basically, once you're logged into the system, all you have to do now is just follow the instructions of the exercise. The first thing it tells you is run T-code VL06I. Again, you could always just copy and paste this and put it in the system here. The T-code area is here at the top. We just write VL06I, and this T-code is going to take us to the inbound delivery monitor page, where pretty much what we're doing is monitoring inbound deliveries, whether it's a list of generated inbound deliveries for goods receipt, for confirmation, put away, distribution, and so on. Okay, now, this is one of the first things if I'm sent to, let's say, Unimid to perform the goods receipt of goods that are incoming, right? That are pending to be received. As far as we know, there are going to be transactions that you'll have to perform for goods that are still incoming. So this is something you will be doing. These are transactions you will be performing in the system. Doing what exactly? Checking, right? Checking to see what inbound deliveries are created and are still pending to be received. All right, and to do so, this is what we do. We add our T-code VL06I, which is going to show us this option here. And what we can do is select our option here for list of inbound deliveries or for goods receipt. Let's go with the exercise and see what we're told to do here. Click on list of inbound deliveries, and then it tells us to fill in the following fields. Now, again, I want you to also consider this. In this case, I'm going to click on the list of inbound deliveries because this is what the exercise is telling me to do, okay? But I also want to go back and forth with what the exercise is telling me to do and what you're going to have to be doing in real life, right? So when I go to this screen is going to allow me to set up the delivery dates here, add a number of delivery dates to show me all inbound deliveries according to the time frame that I'm selecting. So in a sense, I'm pulling a report, right? A transactional report from this T-code that's going to show me all pending inbound deliveries, even those that are actually have been processed or maybe are partially processed. For example, if I change this date here and I did this before, so I'm going to add from the 1st of January 2020 to the 29th of April, or I could do up to today if I want to. You can even go into the future. We'll see that in a second. Okay, if I did this and I added no other information, if you see you have more options here, for example, for purchasing document, if we know the PO number, the who created these, who's the vendor, the inbound delivery number, the material that we're looking for. So you have tons of other options to choose from to perform your search. But with a simple search like just a date range, okay, and you can do this, you'll see in BI there's a lot of searches performed based on date ranges. If I just clicked on execute here, I would get all these inbound deliveries that have either been received, completely processed. So since all I'm pulling is a list of inbound deliveries, that's what I'm getting. Inbound deliveries that have either been processed, not processed, halfway processed, and this is what I get. I get a full list of these inbound delivery documents with their PO number, okay, or linked PO number here, the plant that they're supposed to be here, if it's the shipping plant or receiving plant, the Incoterm, if there's any sort of other material documents or documents linked to them, the location, the vendor, I mean, name of the vendor, the date, the delivery date, the actual GI date. Some of these actually have an actual goods issuing date already. The bill of lading, if it has been added. So there's quite some information in this list. Again, remember it's a training environment, so we may have not all the details required or the details that would normally show up in production, but I think it's accurate enough. So if I'm looking at this list, what you guys have to understand, if I was looking for things that were, let's see, pending receipt, maybe I wouldn't look at my list of inbound deliveries. Maybe I would have gone back and look at my for goods receipt, right? Let's check that option instead. And the delivery date, let's go also with January 1st, and let's go with April 2020 and click on execute. You see the list changes a bit here, okay? We have now things that are still pending goods receipt, and you see how the list has reduced, and I can go back and compare with the other one. One of the important columns to look at here is this one here for total goods movement status. This, even though it only shows us letters, and we're going to understand that in a bit, it also lets us know how far in the process the inbound delivery document is, right? A, referring to something that hasn't been processed at all, and we'll see that in a bit. B, for it's partially processed, and C, for completely processed. So in this case, we see that there is nothing here with a C, so nothing has been completely processed as of yet, but there have been some actions performed. For example, some of these have the GI date entered, okay? And that's why the majority of these, if not all of these right here, if I select the line, you see with a B, there have been a goods issue performed. The same thing with the next B here, and also with the other. So every option here with a B means that something else has been done to this inbound delivery, right? It's been either received and then transferred. Something is going on with these inbounds. The ones I would like to look at are the ones that only have the A, which nothing has been processed for. The goods receipt date hasn't been added either to any of them. So this is something you have to become quite familiar with, all right, when you're pulling reports on pending transactions. But if you're only following the exercise, we actually give it all done for you, right? If you're following the exercise, but we just don't want you to follow the exercise blindly without knowing what you're doing or what it means. We want you to understand what you're doing in this case, because you're going to have to be doing this every day in the mission. So in the exercise, we just tell you, fill in the following fields and click on execute. And we tell you everything. We tell you add the shipping receiving point plant US00. Okay, we also tell you to add your purchasing document. We even tell you delivery dates, remove all dates. See, and I add a comment here. During liquidation, use delivery dates to search for your inbound. So again, here we give it to you step by step on what to do so you're able to perform the exercise, but we want you to understand what it is you're doing. So if I went back, for example, here to my dates, I remember that I told you guys you can add more information to this. You can actually, in this case, this is the info that you have, inbound delivery, purchasing document. Let's go back to what the exercise tells us, list of inbound deliveries. And here again, we're back to the list of fields that we have to fill in. Okay, so let's get rid of the dates here. Let's do what the exercise tells us. It tells us to get rid of the dates. It tells us to use shipping receiving point, same as plant location, US00, okay, in this case. So that means here, shipping point, receiving point is US00. So that's what I would type, US00. And then I would add my maybe purchasing document, see, insert your PO, or I could add my inbound document. If I scroll down here, you see your inbound delivery document. You can add it here too. Where's this information if it's not here in your body? So every time we ask you to insert something you can't find in your body of the exercise, you go back to your cover page, which is this one. Remember, I'm going to scroll out so you remember what it looked like. And now here to the bottom, we use the below table to add the numbers of the documents generated. Okay, so basically you have two things here. Some of these documents you're going to have numbers for, which means we provided you with these documents so that you just have to copy and paste them and move on from there. But others will be blank, like for example, the material document, the transfer requirement, the bin number, the transfer order number. So these are blank for you to add the information here yourself as you perform the transactions in the system. So according to the exercise, I can just simply copy and paste this PO, because this is the purchase order number, into the field here for purchasing document. So I can copy and paste it there. So I added my plant, added my PO, I got rid of the dates, and I click on execute, and there you go. So what have I told the system? I've only told it, please just give me information on this PO number, which is right here, for this inbound delivery number. You see the status is A. I even know the number of relevant items. So I know there's 5 items in this inbound. I have the vendor identification number, the vendor description, the PO delivery date, and the actual delivery date. But nothing else has occurred. There's no goods receipt, there's no goods issue, there's no more details except the dates that I'm supposed to receive these goods in the mission, which is almost less than a month from now in May, okay? The plant and all the info related. But now this is only if I know the inbound and I know the PO. When you guys are sent to the mission and you're doing this for, let's say here, let me get rid of this. Let me go back to my dates here, created on here, sorry. And let me add, for example, 1st of June 2020 and delivery date 01/01/2020. Okay, so now I'm going to pull, I want the system to pull all the inbounds, right, that are either completed, not processed, I don't know. I'm just pulling a list of inbound deliveries from January 1st to June 1st. And I'm doing this for, I think you guys are being sent to Unimid. So I'm selecting SD10. Now remember this from the presentation. SD10 means exactly what? And again, guys, sorry for the Angelos and Nikos and Gianlucas and people that are very familiar with this, but I know others are not. And this is very important. Okay, let's click on this matchbox here to see what this means if I'm selecting SD10. Let's scroll down here. And if I select SD10, what am I telling the system? That I'm selecting Sudan Darfur shipping point. Do you remember this from the PowerPoint presentation? What this means is you see receiving point here, but receiving plant also. So we're selecting the plant Sudan Darfur shipping point, which is Unimid. Remember the plant information for the inventory management that we were looking at in the PowerPoint? So this is where it becomes real, okay? This is where information matters. We're selecting SD10 here for Sudan Darfur. This nomenclature means plant Unimid, okay? This is what we're selecting, and this is what we're telling it. Show me all the inbound delivery documents, whether they're processed or not, from January 1st to June 1st, 2020. I'm clicking, and if there's anything there, it will show me. But if there's not, and this is the training environment, so it seems like there's nothing there for SD10. And that makes sense because it's the training environment. When you guys do this in the system in production, I'm sure it's going to give you tons of answers. So let's imagine US00 is Darfur, right? It's a different plant. In this case, if we're looking at it here to understand what we're selecting, this is USA shipping point. So we're selecting the plant for HQ. We're clicking on execute, and here you go. So this is more or less what you guys are going to find yourselves with. Okay, a ton of work to do, of things that are incoming and things that need to be cleaned up and a ton of data. So you need to become familiar with how to understand this. Okay, what am I looking at here? What is all this information? Now, I would need at least 3 days to explain to you every field and every concept here. That's why if you guys pay attention to the exercise that we're sharing with you. And again, I'm going to scroll back to the top. I highly recommend you guys click on these job aids and take a read of them. Okay, because for example, if I look at this list of inbound deliveries job aid here, let's scroll down a bit. This job aid is going to help you understand every column, every nomenclature that you're looking at. So you understand that A means not yet processed, B means partially processed, C means completely processed. See, GR complete, goods receipt complete. All right, so this is very important. They even have a very good screenshot here of the fields and an explanation of each one of them. So again, spend some time reading through this, all right? The more you spend time before you're sent, the better you'll be and the more efficient you'll be when you're deployed to the mission. See? It's extremely detailed. Now, we could add this to every one of our exercises, but like I said, it would just take, it would be like a 500-page long document, okay? So we add the links there. Now I'm going to just scroll down to the exercise here once again, and let's see where we were. Okay, so we were here. We were adding information on the inbound delivery, and we're clicking on execute, and we're getting the result. Now we have here an option that says in case the inbound delivery has not been generated, run T-code VL34. Again, this is exceptional if it hasn't been generated. If you have any issues, always contact us. But I can go back all the way down to my next part of the exercise, which tell me take note of the inbound delivery number the system provides. All right, so let's go back. And now let's do it the way that the exercise is telling me, okay? So I'm gonna get rid of my dates, and I'm going to add my PO, which was this one here. Yes.
Just
Daniel?
to let you, just to let you catch your breath a little bit. And while you're performing the exercise, just a note, I'm trying to more or less give you the highlights of the main steps that you're taking into the system, and I'm trying to take screenshots of some of the main parts of the exercise, so you can download directly from the chat. So take a look at the chat as in parallel as Brian is explaining. So I think with the chat, with of course your explanation and the job aid, I think that we have a pretty good perspective of the different actions that you are taking into the system. Over to you. And so far, we don't have any comments or questions in the chat, besides a comment or a question from, I think it was Mimo, asking whether the training environment will be available after this training. But that's something that we can discuss probably later, but there will be some sort of a post-training package, but that's something that we can elaborate farther down in these 2 weeks. Over to you.
All right. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Daniel. Exactly, right? So we'll jump into that later on. Let's continue with the performance of the exercise. So let's say that I'm receiving the goods. Let's imagine I pull this report, and I think audio is fine here. Okay, let's say we pull this report. We only have one pending inbound delivery document that we have to receive, correct? So what are the steps? What am I supposed to do here? I can click directly into one of these documents. For example, this is something ECC allows you to do. So if I just double click on this inbound delivery, I go directly to the inbound delivery document that is here. Okay, and I can see its contents. I can see the materials that are going to be received: vaccines, paper, computer, x-ray. So again, let's recall the presentation from yesterday. Material numbers, right? PIDs, the delivery, the quantity of these that are being received, right? 100 vaccines, 100 packs of paper, 10 computers, 1 x-ray machine, 4 alternators. See, all this is taken from the creation of the shopping cart, where the requisitioner selected product IDs from a contract that was approved, then the PO was raised, and these goods are being received into the mission, right? We have our material master data is here also defined. We understand that we have a little more information. Maybe if we scroll to the right, I'll always take a look at the other reference data that could be linked to this. So all this data that we already have in the inbound delivery document is coming from the shopping cart itself. So whoever raised this shopping cart has already populated this data in the shopping cart, and all we're doing is seeing the data that they populated. So we see that we even have the gross weight here, if the valuation type is new supply, new spares, the storage location that was selected, the plant, blah, 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 and so on. Okay, but what is our job starting here? Nicola, you requested control. I don't know.
Not actually. Sorry, I did click by mistake. I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Rejected.
Okay, just making sure. Okay,
Sorry.
perfect. So no problem, Nico. Okay, so we have our inbound delivery document here. And now this is the first thing we're going to do. Let's go back to our exercise here. We go and see what the exercise is telling me to do. So it says this: at this stage, the material should be packed. Okay, for this exercise, the steps will be skipped. However, more details on packing can be found in the job aid here. So we added a link to the job aid that explains the packing process in detail. Okay, we didn't want to put it in the exercise, and we didn't want to waste too much time or having you perform this following the steps of the exercise, but the job aid is there and it tells you in detail how to do this packing. Now, I do want to spend some time with this because I promised that we would be looking at the impact or the integration of the transportation management module. Now, this is something I also want to know, and I'm throwing this question out there. I'm not even sure if Joseph, can you know the answer to this, or Laras, or anyone out there. Are they going to be also during liquidation performing transactions in the transportation management module? So if we perform all the required actions in terms of packing the inbound, packing the outbound, is someone there, let's say the planner is going to go into TM and start tracking transportation too? Is this something they're going to skip during liquidation? We may not even know if they're going to do that, but I'm thinking if the mission is either closing or reducing, we're liquidating it, is someone going to take the time to also track transportation?
Hi, this is Joe here. I'm not too sure. In Minijuice, we didn't do it. We were tracking by other means. But I'm sure for Unimate, it'll be essential.
Okay, because yeah, I think for Minijuice, it wasn't live yet. The TM module hadn't gone live yet, but now it is. So if we're going to be doing these things correctly, right, then packing is going to have to be required, because the planner in the TM system will not track the shipments unless the items are packed. Now, nonetheless, packing should have been done regardless, right? Because when we receive the goods from the vendor, we always have to add the packing details from that the vendor has provided to us. So the action I'm going to perform now is not new. This is something that had to be done. But now, ever since the TM module has gone live, it's become something that is required, because there have been situations where people were not inputting the packing details in the inbound delivery document. Okay, they just let, yes, this is Lucia?
Buongiorno to everyone.
Buongiorno.
Yes, it's included because, but not in inbound, in the outbound delivery in STO process. So it's necessary. I think that already Nico told us that it was one of the modules that should be taken into consideration, because we used to do the TM module in intermission transfer.
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And when we delivered the training in October for TM, we covered that, right? For the inbounds and the outbounds for the STO processes. And it was also told, and we learned from the students there, that for STOs, right, the people usually perform the packing because it's our responsibility. Usually we use our own vehicles to transport, or we use freight forwarders. So we add that information all the time, right? 100% of the times. But when we do receive the packing details from the vendor, we don't usually add the packing information in the system. We just maybe attach the document in the inbound, and that's it, but we don't add the packing details. So adding the packing details in the actual inbound has now become required too. So this is one of the main points. So this packing should be performed. Now, if this is something that you guys, as people that are going to be deployed to liquidate a mission, are required to do, it's beyond me. I really don't know where your duties start and where they end, right? What is your role going to be exactly? Are you responsible for everything or not? You know, or if something is pending packing, you're going to go looking for the inbound coordinator or someone else and say, hey, you have to do the packing, or you're actually going to have the role and ability to do it yourself. That is something I'm not 100% sure of. Nonetheless, I'm going to teach you how to do this. Okay? So in this case, and unless there's anything else, I'm going to move on. And thanks, Lucia, for your comment. Okay, that it was key. All right, so now that I'm in the inbound, if I want to make any changes, and you'll see that this is all blued out, right, instead of grayed out, you really can't do anything to this document, okay, unless I click on the display or change icon, okay? Now everything is available for me to update. And this is something that we'll see here as well. See, it says click on display change icon and fill in the actual GR date. So before I do the GR date, let me quickly do the packing, right, of the inbound delivery. So I'm going back to this. And now that I've clicked on the edit, all I have to do is click on the packing icon here. And this will say items subject to batch handling, assignment could not be packed. Okay. So I can click on the check mark, and now it shows me all the materials that I have here, except for maybe the one that is subject to evaluation. I think it's the vaccines. So I should have to add the valuation of the vaccines before I pack them. Or if there's any specification in terms of how to pack the vaccines or what the system is telling me here. So for example, this line item here, vaccines, if you realize, actually, let me unclick it now. it's easier to see like this. All other line items have the batch area here grayed out, but except for the vaccines, which is telling me I can add the batch number here. Now, for this is also goes out to experts out there that are listening. For this specific step, now, is it really required for me to add the batch at this point? Could I wait and do it only when receiving the goods? How critical is this? Now, I know it's not allowing me to pack it, so if I do the packing without adding the batch information here, the vaccines are going to be left out of my packaging, which of course makes no sense. So that tells me directly this needs to be batch managed before I proceed, right? So this should be a showstopper here, and I should have to add the batch information for the vaccines before I even continue. Okay, and I can click on the matchbox to that now. This may be a bit strange to you. A lot of the times this can happen and say, okay, what class, what information I add here. If you click back, this will happen also to you in ECC. You'll have a list of the selections that you have. So always here, select batches for material, okay? And we have the batches for material number here. We can click on the drop down and click on the check mark. And we should have here, okay, I think I clicked on the wrong one in this case. Let me go back and click on the matchbox here and see what we have. Okay, so these are the batches that we can select, okay, for the type of material that we're adding the batch information to. So what this means for those of you who are new is what we're trying to define for these this material, for this product ID, is an expiration date. We're trying to give it it's the flag has risen automatically when we're trying to receive these goods that say, hey, this material has to be batch managed. So remember, we were seeing that in the PowerPoint presentation yesterday. At some point, these you need to add this information, whether it's the valuation type or the batch information. In this case, for the vaccines, we have to add it before we proceed with the packing. So we can select one of the batches here, and that will already give us that information. And right away, it will give us the information here for the vendor batch. And now if we move on to the packing, we shouldn't have that issue, and our vaccine should now be included in the list. So you see, before we had 4 lines, now we have 5 lines, and the vaccines are included. Okay, and this is what it's supposed to look like. Now, there are several ways of doing the packing. We can either select the items and click on the packing box here, or we can go directly to the packaging material line here and click on the matchbox. Okay, I believe one of the easy ways to do this is we select the lines here, click on the packing icon. It tells us, sir, the system search for allowed packaging materials. We just say yes. Okay, so we don't have any maintained for this case, so we can look for them manually. So you see the system has directly taken me here. We can go to the matchbox here, select the material type that we're looking for. Again, this is all explained in the job aid that I attached. In this case, we're going to be selecting the material type ZPAM, packaging materials here. Click on the check mark. Click again on the check mark, and now we'll have an entire list of packaging materials that are available for us to put these items in. Okay, whether it's a bag, a foam tent. So we're not really making this up. Okay, we're not selecting anything that we want to select. So, well, I think maybe the net pallet is fine. No, this is information that is given to you by the vendor, right? So that's why I'm thinking you guys won't be performing the packing when you're in the mission, performing liquidation. This will be done by someone else who will have that information from the vendor. Okay, so even though I'm just selecting anything here, in this case, I'm going to just select, I believe I'm going to look for, I think, the bubble wrap information, just because I know this one works in the training environment. So I'm going to select wrap bubble, and you see the packaging material is there. You click on enter. This generates a handling unit. And here's where TM comes in. Okay, this is where the impact in TM comes in. The packaging material that we select to add these materials to is something that should have always been done. We select the packaging material according to the description of the vendor, maybe one for each type of material. Right now, I'm putting everything in bubble wrap, which again doesn't make much sense because we can't really put the X-ray machine probably in bubble wrap. We'd have to put it in a pallet or according to what the vendor is telling us to select from. I'm just doing this to show you how to perform the packing and the impact in TM. So we see that once we have selected the packaging material for all these items and we selected OK, we have a handling unit generated. And this is where it's important for TM because this handling unit generated is the one that's going to have an impact in TM in terms of dimension, weight, and volume, okay? And that's very important when we're generating an SOW document, the statement of work that's going to reflect the value of the goods based on the volume dimension of the goods that we're transporting, okay? And this is what we're going to be using for when we request freight forwarders to transport our goods. We're going to have an estimate of the cost for us to transport these goods. Now, I know it's a lot of information. I just wanted to add this detail of TM. So if I double click on that handling unit and I go to the weight, volume, and dimension tab, I simply have to make sure that I add the information for the weight, volume, and dimensions. Now, again, all these fields are clearly explained in the job aid. I'm just going through this quickly here and adding the information that is required. And again, don't pay attention to the digits that I'm adding to this, but the fields that I'm filling in are the ones that are required for the integration with TM. If we don't do this correctly, in TM, you won't have the packaging information details according to the ones we're supposed to have. The planner will not be able to track transportation or even generate transportation proposals. The SOW document generated in TM will not have a valid estimated cost of the transportation. And again, so what we're doing is we're impacting the entire chain of transactions that are following. Okay, so I have added my information on the weight, volume, and dimensions. I click on OK. The system tells me the handling unit was changed, and I can save that, okay? And the inbound delivery has been saved. So the packaging has been performed. The screen I'm in is the same one with the inbound delivery number. I can double click on it. I see what I've done here, okay? I can even go to the goods movement data tab, okay? It seems like the shipment, the status overview. Let me just make sure that I packed these items. If I click on the packaging icon, I see that my packaging is there. Okay, the description is the wrap bubble. So in terms of ECC, everything has been done correctly. Okay, in terms of ECC, it seems everything is fine. Now, in terms of TM, is everything fine? If we were in the TM training environment, okay, and this is something I can show you quickly, we would also have generated, there would be an extra tab here, and I can do that very quickly. Okay, I'll go back to this really quickly, T5E, for example. All right, and then don't pay attention to the logins here. I just want to show you the result if we had done the same transaction in a TM-related environment. Okay, let's see if I can pull this. Okay, maybe we'll go with this one. There you go. And I'm going to click on the very first inbound delivery. Okay, this is a different environment. So you see now we have a TM status tab. And this is important. This is where the integration with TM occurs. So if these items were packed, if this laptop was packed correctly, like I just performed in the other training environment, the TM status tab now will allow me to access this inbound delivery number by clicking on document flow and see that this packing box here, this packing button here, should be available for me to click on. If it's not available, that means that you haven't packed correctly, okay? And it won't be visible in TM. All right, so this icon here needs to be clickable, let's say, for you to understand that you've done the packing correctly. So I already know based on this that these items haven't been packed correctly or packed at all. Okay, but we do see the documents that are generated in TM automatically from the inbound. We see that we have a freight unit and we have a freight order there too as well. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this very quickly. And this is what you will see in production. You will see that you have an extra tab that we don't see in the training environment that is linked to TM. Okay, so let me log off of this one and go back into the training environment that we're using. okay, based on the credentials that we provided to you. And go back to Umoja 133, and again, VL06I. Okay, so I'm going to go right back to where we were. I'm going to add my purchasing document, my plant, get rid of my dates, execute, and we're back to where we were before. Okay, we're back to our inbound delivery document number here. Okay, I can double click on it, and now I'm going to follow the steps. Now that I've already packed and I know that my goods are packed, I'm going to follow the steps in the exercise to add the actual GR date. Okay, so now we're adding the actual GR date. This is because we have a date that we plan to receive the goods in, but now there's an actual GR date. And actually, I just realized, guys, stop me at any time. I know I've gone past the hour. It's an hour and 15. If you guys need a 5-minute break, let's take it now before we continue.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so far, as I said, I'm basically posting some of the highlights of the different steps that you are taking in the system. And I'm I actually posted one of comment remembering that this is not a part of the exercise per se, what you're explaining, these TM impacts and the creation of the handling unit and the impact in TM. But nevertheless, it's information that may get handy at some point once deployed, because you never know what you may encounter once you're deployed there in the mission. So the more information we deliver to you, give it to you, the more tools you have in your hand to be used or to help in supporting the liquidation exercise. Over to you.
Yes, thanks, Daniel. So now that it's 11:15, let's take a 5-minute break, come back at 11:20. And I know we haven't gone through much of the exercise yet, but I'm not worried about that. We can use part of the afternoon session to go through the rest of the demo. But I just want to make sure you guys understand what we're doing, not only to complete the exercise, but to be able to perform this in real life scenarios. Okay, so let's be back in 5 minutes. Hey, Pietro, you want to take control? I don't know if this is a mistake or not. I know it's easy to click on the share screen button when you're trying to mute yourself.
Brian, I have a question. I said I will use it while during this break. Gianluca speaking.
Hey, Gianluca.
I have a little knowledge of this inbound because I was working in MoveCon. If a product ID is wrong, a MoveCon should carry on with the inbound, or should we skip that product ID? I don't know if it's a good question or related to this moment.
I think it's an excellent question, and it's extremely related to this because if a mistake is made at the beginning, right, at the shopping cart level, and all you do is just keep making that mistake, you're just going to make it worse as it goes through, right? So at the point where you realize that the product ID is wrong, you should stop the process. Now, that doesn't mean...
Don't forget, I'm not inspecting the material, correct? MoveCon is not inspecting and understanding that is correct or wrong the PID.
Here's the thing. So, and again, since we have a set of experts listening as well, I think it's the responsibility, right, of the inbound coordinator to understand this. But now, how does this happen? How does someone realize this is wrong, right? I'm not there. I don't perform these actions every day, right? I basically train you guys to use the training environment. But in reality, if I looked at this same inbound, right, and I see these 5 documents, how do I know which one is wrong right from the get-go when I'm receiving this? So the normal thing for me would be, okay, I just continue with the process. No one has said this is wrong. It should be already from the PO level, right? Whoever's reviewing the PO level, from the, let's say, buyer's responsibility to go in and say, this product ID is wrong, or this is not what you should have selected. I'm thinking, I'm really not the one to say whose responsibility it is, but it should have been stopped before it reached the inbound. And the responsibility, sorry, Danilo.
No, go ahead. This is another question that I had in mind. I said I have to ask, because otherwise you keep all these questions. When we were talking about this mobile cellular, no? Okay, we are doing the liquidation. How I understand that on this mobile cellular has been treated with the correct PID and maybe has not been serialized. So I don't know if it's clear my question, but I'm not a subject matter expert, but it's not easy to understand if to the item has been assigned the correct PID and you can search it in the system correctly. So how you retrieve this information, I mean?
May I jump?
Absolutely. I was gonna ask one of you guys to provide support on that one too. So what would you suggest, Nico?
Okay. Just one second, can I, because I'm taking notes on the question. The question is how, for example, someone in R&I can spot if the product ID is wrong, for example, is not serialized. Is equipment not serialized and where it should be serialized, right? Is this your question, Gianluca?
Yes.
Okay, I'm taking notes of
and this is something that has been already processed, and I'm just touching base in the mission, and I'm finding this type of material where I'm trying to search in the system how they have been treated, and if they have not been serialized, how you can, but I think this can be discussed later on, because now we are at the preliminary phase of the process, what I understood.
Okay, all right, thank you, Elena. So yes, Nico.
Okay, just to answer to Gianluca. Okay, the inbound process is quite the very first step of it's come before the receiving. Okay, as you know, and it must be know that generally speaking, it depends from the Incoterms. Is managed by procurement or MoveCon. It depends on the Incoterms, okay? So let's put us into the scenario that is MoveCon that is receiving first these items. You manage electronically the product ID based on vendor documentation, okay? Sometimes it could happen that you won't see physically what the item is itself, okay? So you will never know if the product ID related to that to that inbound delivery and to that PO is the right one. But very first visual aspect of the item itself, it could be a warning sign. For example, if I have a material a PID that is related, as we've seen before, to an iPhone, just for example, and you receive a Samsung, you already know that probably is the wrong material, the one received, okay? But then it's up to the receiving user and the physical receiver or the virtual, whatever it is, to notify this, okay? So
Nico, just let me stop you, because my point was at the beginning, like, I cannot see the material, they ask me to process the inbound, and I will do it. but I will never know if the product ID is correct compared with the material received. This is only this. I mean,
yeah. You know, so, okay, John, sometimes you could know because you have a visual aspect of the item itself in terms of receiving. Sometimes not, because probably you are receiving a box, okay, with the contents. You don't know what there is inside that box. You just base it on vendor documentation, and that's it, or a pallet completely wrapped.
Nico, can I jump in here, please?
Sure.
Gianluca, I mean, as inbound coordinator, unless I'm wrong, you're just receiving the equipment. You're not doing the R&I. I believe that's what somebody else is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Am I right, Nico?
Absolutely, Joe. It could happen that you have a physical view of the item received, and most of the time you don't, because the material is packed, you know, into a box, into a crate, whatever it is, and you don't know what are you physically receiving. You're just receiving some shipment, okay? And based on that, and based on vendor documentation, you update your inbound. It's up to the receiver, the receiving user, later on to establish if the product ID is correct, if the material is conform with the PO specification, and all this kind of info. It's important from the inbound coordinator point of view to establish the actual good received date, the one we see here, that establish when we are physically received into our mission plant the material, okay? Because that is important, because that date will be reflected into the receiving, and that will establish that UN is property of the item from that time, and to update the proper documentation inside the inbound delivery. That's it. That's why it's a live document and has no financial impact into the system, okay? Because based on the MoveCon or procurement info, whatever it is, or let's say inbound coordinator, it's up to next step, the RNI, to establish if everything is correct or wrong, and that's it. It's not up to the inbound coordinator to establish if the shopping cart is correct or the PO is correct. But again, we are quite expertise to understand that if I'm receiving if in the inbound I have an iPhone and you are physically receiving a Samsung, the PO is already wrong, okay? But in that case, you have to update as usual. I mean, the inbound delivery must be updated properly, and then it will be to the receiving user to create all the proper discrepancy. Okay. Maybe from inbound coordinator point of view, it's important to check properly if the storage location is correct, the plant, all the package now, because now we are managing the package as well. All this kind of info, more than the product ID itself, and the quantity again. Okay.
No, technically, the thing is, I will process the inbound, checking the documentation. If everything is listed in the, let's say, inbound is correct, it match with the documentation received, let's say it will be processed. Then, if afterwards there are other technical issues or problems or material wrongly received, because it will be inspected afterwards, we can process this, but then it will be fixed afterwards, correct?
Yeah, it will be in the case of discrepancy, like the one Brian shows before, the status of the inbound A, B, C. Once the RNI will perform the material document with discrepancy or whatever it is, the status of the inbound will change, and if, for example, is not complete, the status will be B. That means that is not completely received, or maybe something is wrong and not completely processed. So that's the point, Gianluca. From an inbound coordinator point of view, there's no problem to establish if the product ID is correct or wrong.
Okay, thanks. Clear.
All right, thank you guys for jumping in. I think this is very important. I know that 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon is not enough to all the discussions that we could possibly have on this matter. And I know we need to move on, but this was a very important topic. Like, what are you responsible for basically, right? Am I just performing these transactions and getting rid of it? Fine, you can do that, but then you're just generating a bigger ball, right, of chaos that is going to roll down into inventory and then everything else. So the sooner we stop the mistake, the better. And this is what we need to understand.
If I just can add to Gianluca, it is true. I mean, I think the primary responsibility for selecting the correct product ID relies on the requisitioner, and then it is checked by the certifying officer and then by procurement. Because it's true that it can be a little bit confusing. There is some equipment that is serialized, other equipment that is not serialized, some spare parts that are not serialized, but then I understand that there are others like the pallets that are tracked and serialized, etc. So in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, the primary responsibility relies between requisitioners and buyers, and then the more you are aware of how the material ID are, the better at the stage of R&I. So you can easily spot, but I don't think that just by viewing the PO, you will be able to spot such a details in the product ID.
Yeah, thanks, Elena, for the comment. Exactly, right? So let's take it in this case, and maybe we can discuss a little more in the afternoon session too, right, in terms of responsibilities and what we're expected to do. The only thing I want to make sure I understood correctly is we're not expecting inbound coordinators to update the inbound with the correct product ID. If there's a wrong product ID from the beginning, right, that should be changed from the beginning. It shouldn't be that the coordinator goes in, changes the product ID and puts the correct one in, okay? We have to have this corrected all the way from the beginning. And this has happened during the go live of TM as well, where we've actually requested them to cancel the POs, cancel the inbounds, and restart again and raise the shopping cart all over again because the product ID was wrong. Okay, so this should be the normal process. Okay, so let's say now, yes?
Yes, Brian, just to highlight it. I didn't want to intervene, so sorry. I don't know if this can be useful. So you are right. This is the procedure. The Gianluca question, it was interesting. It depends on the financial year, because sometimes the PO are belong to financial year. So this means that is within the financial year. It's better that MoveCon, even if they don't touch the PID, they can communicate with the relevant person, R&I, procurement, who else is involved, to tell them that maybe could be a mistake, and this can avoid to receive a PO with the wrong PID. So procurement and shopping cart, they can do a change order directly. The inbound can be deleted and redoing again with the correct PID. So they have not to change, they have not to touch anything, as you said, but at the end they can communicate if something is strange to avoid to receive the item with the wrong PO, wrong PID. Because at this stage we can change the PO, we can change the shopping cart, and we can receive in inventory the correct PID with all the right elements. This is what we usually do. So it's a way of communication.
6 eyes are better than 2 or 4, right? Correct.
Sorry if I jumped in. So sorry.
No, anytime.
Right.
And yes, thank you guys for that. And remember that I know the time is limited, but all this information you guys are giving back to us, since you're there in person physically, you do these transactions every day. there's nothing like your knowledge. So anytime, Lucia, intervene. I think I heard someone else, and we'll take that last input and we'll dive back into the exercise.
If we are in the break, can I share the answers?
We're not in the break anymore.
Oh, we're not
the
in the break.
It's been over for a while, yeah. Actually, we never even had one. No, we started talking and then eventually just continued.
Okay, I will ask Lara on the side. Lucia, sorry.
Sorry for that, Brian.
And no, don't worry. Honestly, I'm not used to breaks. When these trainings are in person, there are no breaks. So we're more than used to it. And I'm glad that we're all sharing information and learning. That's what this is all about. Okay, so let's move on now to the actual goods receipt date, right? So let's say that everything is fine, and there are no issues here. So we're receiving these goods on the 21st of April instead of the 15th of May, right? So this is the point where we're going to be adding the actual goods receipt date, which in this sense is 21/4/2020. Okay, this is the actual goods receipt date. And you're not only doing that because this is what the exercise is telling you to do. Okay, we're telling you have to think about why you're doing this, right? So we're performing the receipt of goods that are supposed to be received almost a month from now, but we're receiving them a bit earlier. But in this case, what are we looking at here? At what stage are we in? Because this, when I was learning Umoja at the beginning, was something that was very difficult for me to understand, right? To visualize what's happening right now. Okay, so right now, if we're receiving these goods, first of all, Incoterms have become a very important part of the transactions that we're performing, as so much in STOs as to the goods receipt process because of TM. So what are we talking about here when we're saying goods receipt? What is the Incoterm that was added in the shopping cart? Okay, and I want to show you guys how to see this as well. Since we added a goods receipt date, and I know this because we're creating these exercises in the training environment, what this means is that we've actually physically received the goods at final destination, which in this case would be the mission. Why? Because this is a DAP Incoterm. And I know this because we created the exercise, right? But how do we see this in the inbound, okay? We can go to the header data details here in the inbound, and we can see information on the shipment added here. Now, in this particular case, we don't have this information here. Like the Incoterm should appear here, okay? And this may have to do something with the training environment. The Incoterm should appear here, or we should manually add it if it's not there present in the shipment tab. But if we look at the PO, and I'm going to click on this new window. By the way, if you want a new window to open in ECC, just click on this create session window and a new one will open. My old one is still back there, okay? Again, for people that are new, you can open up to 6 of these at the same time, okay? So let's make this large again. Okay, there you go. And let me just make it easier to visualize here. And I'm going to go to T code ME23N, which is one of the T codes that we added to your cover page. Okay, and I'm going to look and confirm that PO, and again, I'm just doing this quickly, but we're going to show this to you too. I can actually see in my cover page, if I use my purchase order number, see, that's what this is there for, and I paste it here. If I see this, and I look at my item details here, and I look at my delivery in terms of, here you go. Okay, I should see in the tab for delivery that this is DAP New York, which means that these goods are supposed to be transported all the way to the final destination, which is the mission. So when we're talking about goods receipt, and now I'll explain this process again later, okay? I just wanted to show you this quickly, that I'm just not making this up. So when we're adding a goods receipt date, we're receiving these goods physically at the location. So right now, what that means is that we have to add the following information. We're adding info like, for example, the bill of lading, because we have already that document. We're adding the actual good receipt date that we're receiving these goods on, okay? So that's what this is. The bill of lading, in this case, I'm just gonna add any number because the training environment doesn't keep that in mind, but you should add the official one, of course. In this case, the Incoterm should be added here. I don't want to tamper with this training environment because it's not meant to deal with these Incoterms, so I don't want to play around with this. But in TM, the new environment and production, this Incoterm information should be here. If not, you can always just manually add it. Okay, but it should be here, and it should be, if you manually add it, it should be the correct one in the PO. Okay, so we're adding the bill of lading. We see that the receiving plant is this one. Since it's DAP, it was delivered by the vendor, so we don't need to add the freight forwarder detail information. We can go back to our overview tab, and now that we've added the details, we can always just click on enter and save that data. And it says the inbound delivery has been saved. Let's see what the exercise is telling us to do. Basically, after we added the bill of lading and the actual goods receipt date, we have the inbound delivery saved, and it seems like that's good enough up to the next step, which is the inventory management, physical goods receipt, receiving user. Okay, so the next step is going to be the Migo transaction. Okay, so far, what have we done here? Basically, I was going to say nothing, but no, we've done a lot of we've added a lot of important details to the inbound delivery, but we've done nothing in terms of inventory management. Remember that inventory management structure? We haven't received these goods into inventory. So in our system, these goods are still pending to be received. They're somewhere in, let's say, limbo, right? Right now, they're in a transitional stage between being received physically, being received in the inventory and not, right? So they're there pending. How do we know something is pending to be received? And this is important. How does somebody know what's pending? Well, VI06I, so the T code that we added here, will let us know the inbound deliveries that are pending to be received. But we can also see those that we have transacted, okay? But now, once we perform Migo, and let's do that, there are situations, and you'll see this. When we perform Migo, that means that we should be receiving these goods completely, right, into the system. But let's say that we only receive half of these goods in the system instead of all of them, because that will happen too. Maybe we only receive half for some reasons, right? Maybe, I don't know, it's 4:25 in the afternoon and I have something important at 4:30. I'm transacting and I say, you know what, I'm just going to receive half of this and tomorrow I'll finish. But turns out it's Friday, I'm going on a weekend, I come back on Monday, and now I don't remember that inbound or PO that I'm supposed to be receiving into inventory. Now I'm just making up the scenario, but this could be possible. We also have to understand, and this is a T code that I recommend you guys to look at, ME2K, and this is added in the cover page, okay? These T codes that we recommend you to look at, ME2K is there. This will show you transactions that have been fully received or partially received, okay? So before I do Migo, I recommend you take a look at this ME2K, okay, which is the purchasing documents per account assignment. And we can add the cost center in this case, again, only for the training environment. We have the purchasing organization there too. And I'm just going to change the view of this. I just want to show you this quickly, and then I'll go through the Migo transaction. And maybe we can discuss a bit more on this in the afternoon. This T code will allow you to view items that we are still to be delivered or still to be invoiced. Okay, what this means, if we're looking at the still to be delivered column here, if I select it and I filter, now there's a lot to learn here. All these actions I'm doing of filtering, selecting this and that, this deserves a training on its own, but we can't spend too much time on that. So if we're looking at still to be delivered and I click on the match box, here, in this case, I think because we have too many options here, okay, maybe I can add, cannot display possible entries here. Okay, very good. So we can add the information on the values and say that I want to see everything that equals maybe 0. Okay, now it maybe shows me, no. So everything that equals 0, and I click on OK, what this would mean is that if I have a 0 value here, and guys that are listening, correct me if I'm wrong here too, it would mean that for all these purchasing documents that I have, and I can scroll down and down and down, all these that show 0, this would mean that all the items in these POs have been properly received, right? So we have this PO that has 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 7 items. All these have been properly received into inventory through the Migo transaction, but yet not invoiced, right? So we have $600 here, not the total, but every item is worth $600, has not been yet invoiced, but has been received into our inventory. And it's important to know, because if I go back here and I filter this out, and now I tell the system, give me everything that is not equal to 0, meaning that has an actual value, and I click on the check mark. Now I have a full list, and I look at the dates. Document dates are 20 here, but maybe I want to do this in ascending order. I have things from 2017 that are still pending to be received. And this is the training environment, but I wouldn't be surprised if you go to the mission you're liquidating, you run this report and see 2017, even earlier than that if possible, okay, of things that are pending to be received. Okay, so you may find things that you don't expect, right, when you're running reports like this. What this would mean is that these POs are still pending to be received since 2017 into your inventory. So these are pending transactions. Honestly, you would have your work cut out for you if you're just assigned to process all this. So this is important to understand for those of you who are going to be deployed. ME2K is a very good T-code to use to understand what is pending to still be received through the MIGO transaction, okay, for physical goods receipts. Okay, now I don't know if anybody wants to jump in, fine. If not, I just wanted to quickly show you this T-code. Again, remember that it's in the cover page as a recommended T-code. We don't tell you to use it in the step-by-step of the transactions, but we tell you that it's important as a reporting transaction. Okay, the exercise itself won't tell you to use that one either, but this is up to you to use it. The training is also training you to do this. So now we can go through and do the MIGO transaction here. Okay, now is when we would go and perform MIGO and receive these goods into inventory. So this MIGO transaction is very popular, and it was very popular back in GDP 1 and 2, because this is the transaction that starts everything into inventory, right? If we made a mistake in the shopping cart, the procurement division hasn't caught it, the inbound coordinator, R&I, hasn't caught it, and now we're doing the MIGO transaction, and we haven't caught the mistake here either. Let's say the receiving user in this case hasn't checked this either and is only going to be receiving. See how the ball just keeps growing. And now we're making a mistake and we're adding it to inventory too.
Brian.
Let's see how, yes.
Sorry, just 2 minutes really. Just to reinforce the fact that it's extremely important that the shopping cart is properly done. And especially when they select the types of PO, the cost center, okay? Because if items are purchased as direct material, we will never have the transaction between inventory and warehouse. It will be just related to inventory. You remember that little K that we see on the list before? It stands that the items have been properly purchased for cost center. And this is related to all the equipment and expendable need to be ticked at shopping cart level that we are purchasing for cost center, because if not, the items will have an inventory transaction only. It means once RNI is done, nothing happening. It's just for the inventory, okay? And when we see the A, that stands for we are purchasing fixed assets, 21, etc. The fixed assets are always, even if it is not selected at shopping cart level, purchased for inventory, and we will have a transaction of into the warehouse. Okay, that's it.
All right. Perfect. So yeah, exactly. Thanks for that, Nico. Very important too, right? There's definitely a lot to learn, right, in very little time. So this is very important. If we select the columns and click on the filter, we can see that we have at least 2 different types of nomenclatures here. Okay, K, purchase for cost center, and then we have the A that Nico was just talking about, related to the assets. Okay, and we can filter this out. So again, this T-code is definitely worth visiting in your own time, learning about it, read the job aids, as there's explanations on this one too, and navigate through these T-codes. We can also, if you need help and you've been going through these T-codes as well and want us to cover some things related to it, I just want to make sure I go through the transaction, at least today. We still have 2 hours in the afternoon. And I don't know, I hope you guys are happy with how the session is going. Sorry about all the jumping back and forth, but I think it's key. Sending you guys over to the mission. Just knowing how to follow my exercise is useless, okay? You need to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. If not, you're going to just be someone warming up a chair in the mission, and we want you to actually be efficient. So let's go back to our Migo transaction here, okay? Selecting the goods receipt and inbound delivery from the 2 drop-down lists, okay? So now we're going to learn how to use the Migo transaction and input the correct data. All right, so what do we do here? The first thing, we're going to tell the system that, I can close this window here. I'm going to tell the system from the drop-down options that we see here that I'm performing a goods receipt, and I'm going to select here, not from an outbound, okay? I'm doing it from an inbound delivery document. So goods receipt, inbound delivery document, and then I have a field here where I have to put my inbound delivery document. And I know this inbound delivery document number. I'm processing this. Again, it's in your cover page and your transaction as well. So in this case, the GR goods receipt is 101. So we haven't gone there. We say we select, add the number of your second inbound delivery. Okay, I have to make sure here that I correct this, because this should be still your first inbound delivery if we're talking about a physical goods receipt. I think that's a typo from my end. Okay, so we're going to add the information on the inbound delivery. So we're going to copy it from our cover page, okay, because you guys have been given this information. We go back to our system here, we paste it, we click on execute, and that should have now all the information that we just saw in the inbound delivery document pasted here. So we're looking at the goods receipt, inbound delivery 1976. We added goods receipt, inbound delivery. The system automatically uses the movement type. Remember this from the PowerPoint presentation yesterday? Movement type 101, GR goods receipt. Okay, so these movement types are so important, I can't even begin to explain, but they're very, very complicated to understand in a short period of time. If I click on this matchbox, you guys can have an idea of the amount of movement types that there are in the system. Now, again, are you going to learn to use them all? Absolutely impossible, but we should at least learn to use the ones we're going to be dealing with in liquidation, right, that are in the scope of our training. You have also a definition of what these are here. If you take a look, goods receipt for purchase order into warehouse, okay? So there's a sort of a definition here. I recommend you review the PowerPoint presentation we shared. So this is the correct movement type for goods receipt, GR. And we have our information here. We have our document date, our posting date, the PO number, the bill of lading, the vendor. Okay, we have our information. We also have the line items here, okay, that we're going to have to check. But now we have to go one by one as the receiving user to make sure that we're adding the correct information to these materials that we're receiving. So the first one, if you see below, we have a material, vaccine hepatitis A. Okay, if I click on the second one, you see how it changes. Now it's paper, sterilization, computer, computer desktop, and so on. Okay, each one of these has a requirement. Okay, I can actually show you how the system is going to tell you that there are requirements. Because I could go and say, okay, is this what I'm supposed to do? Let me just post and I'm done with my work, right? We have a button here for check. And we can always check and see. First of all, it tells me you have not flagged any of the items as okay. Okay, and I'll show you what this is. Every single item that we look at here has a checkbox that says okay. We can select it, and we're telling the system that everything's okay. We're good to receive. We're good to move on. And I can just select that and check again and say, okay, check now. And it should return to me a bunch of errors, or at least some errors. The system is already telling me something. It says, the batch has already been posted in stock. Okay, the batch, this is for the vaccines. There are maintained serial numbers for total quantity and maintained serial numbers for total quantity. It's actually telling me for the items that I have to be careful. Item in line 3, item in line 4, item in line 1. So something is missing. I still have to do something. The system is telling me this, that I have to be careful. And actually it indicates to me in red which items are not okay to go. So it seems like the paper is fine, the alternator is fine for me to process, but I need to do something with my vaccines, something with computer, and something with X-ray. Go back to your exercise now, and let's take a look at this. Okay, so we have a goods receipt here, movement type 101, select and line items. Okay, again, I explained here the same thing I have just explained, the material tab, okay, and the quantity tab. Where, so we explain it all to you step by step with screenshots and notes. Okay, for serialized materials like X-rays, fixed assets, or computers, click on serial numbers. So we describe step by step what you have to do and show it in a screenshot of how it's supposed to work. Okay, so now let me go in and see and perform this transaction without looking at the exercise step by step, but explaining it to you. Okay, by the end of this transaction, I should have a material document. All right, and we're going to leave it there when we perform this transaction and pick it up in the afternoon. All right, so we go back to our transaction. I'm looking at my vaccines. I'm going to select my vaccine line, look at my quantity and say, okay, 100. I could actually change the quantity I receive at this point here too. I could say that the quantity is only 50 that I want to receive, and I want to wait for the other 50 later on. Okay, so we can receive the whole 100 or just receive the 50. It's at this point, we could still make that decision based on a series of factors, right? Where we're receiving this, basically based on the information that was added all the way from the shopping cart. Okay, we're receiving this in plant US 00, storage location 3241. See, the stock type here is already for quality inspection. So once I receive these goods, they're going to go into quality directly. You can always make a selection here for unrestricted use, for blocked, but of course, depending on the item, we may have an alarm from the system, right? Or a warning from the system. We see the purchase order data, the Incoterm, PO, and so on. The batch tab, okay? We see that we already have batch information here. And why do we have it? Because I added it at the beginning in the inbound delivery documents. So this information is already there. The only thing the system is telling me as a warning is that we already have a batch posting. Maybe I want to check it to see if it's the correct one. Okay, we have the account assignment information. We don't need any serial numbers. It actually says it right here. And we have the warehouse management tab, which we're going to be revisiting once we post the material document, because something is important that's going to show up here. I'll show you in a bit. Okay, we can move on to our paper. We saw that we have a green light. We can move on to our computer desktop, where we have a red light. And why is that? Because computers are serialized items. So these are materials that we're starting with the 15 number. It's a piece of equipment. There's a flag for serialization. How do we serialize this piece of equipment? We go to the tab for serial numbers. And what does this mean? We're assigning a serialization number to this piece of equipment that we're receiving, this material that we're receiving, because we're receiving it for the first time into our inventory, and we haven't serialized it yet. We haven't given it a sort of a barcode, so you understand when you receive something into a store. If you worked in a store and you're receiving a t-shirt and you tag it with a price tag that has a specific barcode, you're serializing this, right? You're giving it a value and meaning in your inventory. And this is what we're doing here. So we can create serial numbers automatically. We select that option here. And it's the same option we're going to be doing with the X-ray, because even though the X-ray is a fixed asset, remember, it's also an equipment, and we're serializing that as well. Okay, and there you go. So now we have both our computer and our X-ray serialized. We don't have our serial numbers here yet, but we're going to see how they're generated in a bit. And we create our serial numbers automatically simply by checking this box. We also, let's see if we go back, we can go through the different tabs. We understand that we already have the valuation types set up, but these were already set up right from the shopping cart because they were already there in the inbound. We have that for the computer, and we have that, okay, the X-ray in the sense doesn't have that option. You see how they change depending on which one I select. And now that I've added the serial numbers, I can check again and see now what warnings do I have. So batch has already been posted in stock. Okay, it's only a warning message. It's not stopping me. See, now I have green light all the way around. So I could actually post this goods receipt. And what I'm going to do when I post this, what I'm telling the system is that I'm receiving this into inventory. The system is going to return a material document number, and this is something we have to take note of. So if I go back to my cover page, the one that we sent to you, you see that the material document, MIGO, is blank. Here is where I want to add that document number, okay? We're going to have to add that one to keep track of it. And in the assessment that we're going to want you guys to perform at the end of the training, this is what we'll do. We'll give you a cover page. We'll tell you what transactions to perform, and you'll have to fill in the proper documents here so that we know that you were able to complete the transaction. So the material document MIGO isn't performed yet. Let's post it by clicking on Post. And let's see what the system tells us. If everything should be okay based on my check before, it seems like the items are fine and they should be received into inventory without a problem. Okay, so we should have the material document generated. Okay, so there you go. If you look at the bottom left of your screen, or my screen in this case, you see the material document generated, which is the 3 zeros, okay, in this case, 260674. All right, so this is the material document that now we're going to be using for every other transaction in the system. What the system has done too is it actually loaded a window that tells me, do you want to print this? And what is this exactly? Well, we explain this in the exercise too. We actually say that if you want to, you can print the barcodes as well after the material document has been generated. Okay, before I look at this post here, see right here, you can actually go to T-code MB90. Okay, if you don't have your direct access to the printer set up on your computer, or if by any chance you click on cancel, close this window, you can always go back to T-code MB90. If not, you can just click on OK and print your barcode. In my case, I don't have a printer connected, so I'm just going to cancel this. I have my document number there. You see the screen has gone blank, and now my material document is generated. Okay, so in terms of receiving the goods, I should be done. And now I'll show you, if I want to, I can actually go back in this same T-code, click on display, add my material document number, which is actually the only option I have, add my material document number here, which I believe it's the one displayed, yes, 26064, click on execute, and now what this does is display the document that I have just posted. Okay, so all the details are there, but you see I can't do anything to change the data. It's already been received. I could still reverse this, okay, but I'm not gonna show you guys this right now. Okay, and remember the warehouse management tab that I was showing you before? If you go to any of the lines and you click on this warehouse management tab for any of these lines, okay, computer, X-ray, alternator, whatever it is, you now have, this is what I wanted to show you before, a TR number 364. Okay, so actually by posting this document, you have two documents generated. You have your material document and your transfer requirement number, which is 364. What does this mean? Once we have performed an action in inventory, and this is the last thing I'll say, and we'll close it for the morning session, the system is generating a requirement to receive goods into the warehouse. So the system is telling you, listen, there's still something to be done, right? We haven't finished. We only received into inventory. We now have to receive physically into warehouse, and we have to put it in a bin, a final destination. So we're only getting started with this process, and this is only one process, physical goods receipt. It's not done yet. We've only reached the inventory management structural elements at this point. Okay, we still have to receive this into the warehouse. So if I were you, 364, I would go back to my cover page, go back here and do the transfer requirement, 364, the material document number, and I would add my material document number here, 51232600674. Okay, these are the ones you're adding to your exercise. The ones above were the ones we gave you. Okay, so basically it seems I'm only missing 2 more transactions. So let's see what that looks like in the afternoon. Okay, I think it's been enough for a 2-hour session. I hope you guys have been following and it's been informative. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen at this point. any questions before we go on for lunch and then meet again in the afternoon session? Anything in the chat? If you haven't interrupted me, Daniel or Elena or Sol or Saida, is because everything is fine so far?
Yes, exactly, Brian. Thanks. Thanks for the session. It was very, very interesting. What I was doing, I mean, in terms of chat, we had several comments reinforcing some of the points that you stated during the demo. And as I informed you guys before, I am posting some of the screenshots in the chat that you can download easily if you just click on it. And I think it's a good piece of information to follow as well. So besides that, from my end, I don't see any further comments or questions before lunch. So over to you. And sorry, I forgot that I will post the evaluation of this session right now in the chat. Thanks.
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, so yeah, before we close the session, just take 2 minutes to fill in the survey for the evaluation of this particular session. Anything else before we close the session? Any other question or comment? Maybe everybody's having lunch already. All right, thank you guys for your valuable input. Please take a look at the chat and fill in the survey. It's quick. It's really just selecting 1 star, 2 stars, 3, 4, or 5. It's a very quick survey. Thank you guys. We'll meet in the afternoon session. Again, it's going to be me. Sorry, today it's a full day of just me. We'll meet again at 2 and 2 to 4. And today we do have that afternoon session with New York. All right, so I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.